Okay, let's turn back to our slides here and we'll get into what are boundaries? What are these things that feel so nebulous and hard to identify and hard to find? So there's a lot of great teachers out there. I put together a resource guide for you. It's in, you probably saw it in your online portal. And there are many links that you can go to explore more of this. But here's some of the information that I wanted to piece together. So Dr. Henry Cloud identifies boundaries as a property line. Brene Brown, one of my favorites, she says boundaries tell us, tell other people and tell ourselves what's okay and what's not okay. Dr. Nicole LaPera, who calls herself the holistic psychologist, she says boundaries are rules and limits set for and by you about how you want to experience yourself in relationship and that tell others how to treat you. So we're really talking about this space between ourself and other people. And sometimes between ourself and ourself. There are boundaries that we need to hold with ourselves too, but there's this element of it being between people. So a lot of this gets brought up in relationship, and that's one of the reasons why it can feel so confusing and conflicting. So if we have any rules, because I really relate to what Salwa said as a person who likes to have rules, I like to know how to do this. This first section is going to give us the rules, like some really clear, tangible descriptions of how to identify what's our property and what's not our property. Where do we need to set a boundary and what's not ours to be in control of? So we want to approach this as this is like a metaphor here, as a boundaries surveyor. If you live on, especially like I live in kind of the suburbs of Portland. So there's homes that are, kind of like the properties are all next to each other and we each have our fences. And sometimes there might be a discrepancy about, where is this fence line technically? Where is that line between my property and your property? And so you might have a surveyor come out and look at the land and say, oh, this is actually what, the parcel says, this is where the line is. So that is where your property stops and the next person's property begins. So you can think of ourselves as a surveyor. And the questions we're going to ask is, what is the type of property in question and who owns it? And so I'll describe what types of property there are and who the potential owners are of that property. So 5 types of property. This comes from Nicole LaPera. She says that these are the types of property that we would want to set a boundary around. These are the things that we own, that we have, that we control, that are in our possession. So emotional property, my feelings are mine. Material, my things. My time and energy. My mental property, which is what's going on in my mind, my beliefs, my thoughts, my opinions, the way I see the world. And then my physical property, my physical body. Those are the 5 types of property that she outlines. So if we think about those types of property, we're going to now look at if we have these property types, who could own these things? What are the potential owners? And this comes from, I don't have her name on here. I'll add that. This comes from Byron Katie. She talks about the 3 kinds of business. She says, I've found 3 kinds of business in the universe: mine, yours, and God's, whatever you want that to mean. Life, reality, everything outside of my control and your control is in that realm of nature's control. So my business, and I like to call this my yard because it helps us to delineate, again, the property. So my business, my yard, is what's my property, my feelings, my actions, my beliefs, my time, my words. Those are my property. which means that I get to control them, but also I am responsible for them. Your business, your yard, your property contains your actions, your words, your beliefs, your feelings. So many of us relate to that, the idea of being a people pleaser, where we care about how other people feel. We want other people to feel good. We want other people maybe even to look favorably on us and support us or agree with us or like us. And so sometimes it's really hard to let their property be their property, that their feelings and their beliefs and their words and their actions are theirs. And then the rest. So the third business, the third owner, the third property type is the rest. And two of my favorites to remember and two that trip us up often are part of the rest, part of life's business, the universe's business is the past. What has already happened, I cannot control that anymore. It's not even my responsibility anymore. I might choose to do something now about what has happened in the past, if that's my responsibility now. So when we're in the past, we're in the universe's yard. We're not in our yard anymore. When we're in the future, when we're worrying about things that may happen, that have not happened yet, we're in the future. Things like the weather, traffic to some extent, everything that's outside of my control and your control would then be part of the universe's yard or the universe's property. So these two pieces, whose property is it and what is the property, these two features make up our map that can help us get our bearings when we're confused or conflicted or unsure about boundaries. This is the place to start, is to get out our map and say, where am I right now? Oh, I'm in my neighbor's yard right now. I'm worried about their feelings or what they're doing or not doing or saying or not saying. Let me walk myself back to my own yard and see what is mine to do. What can I do about this situation? Okay, so that gives us our bearings. Now let's look at, we talked about just in general what boundaries are, but now let's look at this sort of spectrum or range of healthy versus unhealthy boundaries. What do those words even mean in relation to boundaries? So this, I really like having the visual of this spectrum. So we can just on a really simple level look at boundaries on a spectrum from weak or even non-existent to rigid. And I think some of you mentioned this, and I relate to this too, where it's like I vacillate between, and in some areas of my life, it's harder to feel into where are the boundaries. They feel really murky. In other times, in other places, I might go to the extreme where I cut myself off from people and putting up, it's almost like a wall, like literally like a wall around ourselves. The goal with our boundaries, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but the goal is that we can connect with other people. So we do want this, you see the dotted line around the healthy boundaries. We do want some amount of porousness where we can still be in connection with other people, whatever that means in the moment. It doesn't mean we have to be connected, but it means it is possible and available to us, while also knowing, delineating, okay, but this is my space and that is your space. So some questions that we can ask ourselves when we're looking at, are my boundaries healthy right now? Where does this fall on the spectrum? We can ask ourselves, is the property ownership clear? Am I clear about whose property I'm focused on right now and what it is? Is that clear? Another feature of healthy boundaries is that they are bi-directional. So this means we express or we communicate our boundaries. That's our responsibility. We also are responsible for respecting other people's boundaries and upholding the limits that they set for us. So they're bi-directional. They go both ways. Are we able to express and accept. So again, that's the bidirectional nature, a yes or a no. Like, can I say yes when I mean yes? Can I say no when I mean no? And do I receive and accept someone else's authentic yes and no? And then the last piece is around this like the dotted line. Am I able to have connection and to have autonomy? So these are some questions that we can ask ourselves when we're looking at boundaries. And these change across relationships, and they can change over time. So I think I'm going into the next slide here. So knowing that there's no one way to have a boundary. There's no right way and wrong way. It may look different in each relationship for you. But there are some keys here that help us to find where is that line for ourselves. So healthy boundaries are very important to our health, physical, mental, emotional health. They look different for each person and for each relationship. They can change over time, so they don't have to be static, and they are bidirectional. They require both us to communicate our own needs and limits, and then they also require us to respect the needs and limits of others.